Hey everyone, before this video starts, I just want to say up front that this video is going to be a little bit different than the others that are on my channel. If you've been subscribed for a while, you're no doubt accustomed to my in-depth reviews on films and entertainment releases, and one of the main reasons I found a love in analyzing media is due to how much of a personal effect it can have upon a viewer in a multitude of different ways. This video will be taking a much more personal viewpoint upon a movie title specifically, and I just want to alert all of you before the video starts that I will potentially be touching on some heavy and difficult subject matter in this video that might be triggering and upsetting for some. It's subject matter that I deeply grappled with, and I've even gone back and forth on if I should even go through with this video at the end of the day. However, as we'll shortly get into, I believe in the purpose of this video, and even though it might be incredibly challenging at times to film this, I believe that's above all extremely important. With that being said, thank you for watching and let's get right into the video. As you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month every year. First founded in the year of 1949, it's a time of the year where we gather to educate about mental health afflictions and disorders and advocate for support and change in how we approach these difficult and sensitive topics. I've long wanted to make a video concerning this specific month, as it's a topic I truly believe in and want to advocate for in any way I can. However, as I continued to contemplate how I could best approach this subject matter, I realized that perhaps the best and most effective way I could was by approaching it through my own lived experience in the best way I know how, through film. You know, one of the main concepts of mental health awareness that I've always appreciated and understood on a fundamental level is how you can look at someone and not always know on the surface what they are struggling with deep down. It's a concept that has opened up my viewpoint in so many different circumstances, approaching the world around me with awareness and determination to advocate for the better, and to ultimately treat people with the love and respect they deserve as the unique and wonderful human beings they are. And it's also a concept that I truly understand because I lived it from the opposite perspective. It might shock some of you to know that I struggled with some serious mental health issues a few years ago. Growing up, I was always ostracized and labeled as different in any capacity. Growing up in a grade school environment where such a heavy emphasis was placed on sports, yet whereas my pursuits and interests often lied in the artistic field, I often felt a disconnect among many of my peers due in part to where I found my true passions. As I grew up, this often led to me wondering if something was inherently wrong with me. For as long as I can remember, I struggled with self-worth and self-love, not understanding if something was inherently wrong with me and beating myself down for so many things I never loved or respected about myself. It always hung at the back of my mind, never truly leaving my perspective and hanging over me almost like a metaphorical cloud. This, in turn, led to me trying to suppress such thoughts and feelings through the only way I knew how, by pretending they weren't there. Although I didn't realize it at the time, this was perhaps the worst thing I could have possibly done. By putting on a fake facade for the people around me, by pretending everything was fine even when it really wasn't, and distracting myself with anything I could think of to get my mind off of this negative state even for a little while, I in turn allowed these inner feelings to bubble and simmer, never addressing them with the care and thought they actually deserved. And even worse, I never felt that I could seek help from anyone for them. I didn't feel like anyone really cared. I went through a period of time a few years ago where I hated myself. I hated everything about myself. I never felt like I could get better, and even worse, I never felt like anyone else could help me. And this is why one night, that I unfortunately remember all too well, I tried to take my own life. It's not a decision I'm proud of. It's something I look back upon and realize how selfish and superficial and downright stupid it is. And it's not something I've ever really opened up about even now. Even now, as I sit here making this video, this is really one of the only times I've really ever addressed this or reconciled it outside of my own internal viewpoint. Luckily, that night, my attempt was unsuccessful. But in the years since this event, as my respect for not just my life, but the lives and well-being of everyone around me has grown, I've begun to realize that there are so many other people out there struggling with the same issues and turmoil deep within. The goal of this video is not to dwell upon these events in any real capacity or to focus intently on this dark period of my life with any prevalent focus. Instead, I want to help in the only way I know how, through analyzing media and talking about film. Out there, statistically speaking, I know there's probably at least one person watching this video who is currently struggling with mental health issues or has struggled in the past. I know all too well the self-centered viewpoint that can take over in this mind state, which can shut everything out and tune out even the people around us trying to help. But because I know this all too well, this is why I want to share my story through film and make an impact. If I can reach at least one person out there watching this video to let them know that they're not alone in the struggle and to convey and contextualize how much they matter, I'll have done my job. And to do this, I will accomplish it in perhaps the only way I know how to. Talking about media. You see, one of the main reasons I love this art form is because of the way it can affect people even in ways they cannot fathom or expect. It's a phenomena that you truly feel within, and when it happens, it can be something extremely special. It's why I do what I do, analyzing and breaking down media and truly getting to the question of why these specific elements work or do not work in the context of each film. And in this way, one of my main goals on this channel is to share love and appreciation for this film and media with audiences who might feel that connection for themselves. And in this way, I find it necessary to talk about a film that fundamentally changed my outlook on life, even in the darkest of times. A few years ago, I first came across a fairly unassuming film on its surface, which was Edson Oda's film 9 Days, which was released in 2021. I cannot for the life of me tell you why I decided to click play on this film on this particular day, but to say that such a decision was potentially life-altering is an understatement. Walking away from this film, I understood that this was it. This was a film that reinforced love for life and humanity, using such a universal through line to tell such a resonant and layered story about the human experience. Through wholly creative means, it's a film that legitimately changed my worldview, and for good reason. Although it may seem over the top or corny to claim, 9 Days changed the way I viewed my life. And for that, I am incredibly grateful. In the opening few moments of 9 Days, it becomes apparent that the viewpoint audiences take within the film is unlike anything we're used to. As a hazy and grainy fuzz slowly dissipates to reveal a loving couple smiling down on the camera, we as audiences place ourselves. We are watching the viewpoint of Amanda, a 28-year-old violin prodigy, as she lives out her life. As the film expands outward, it is revealed that the viewpoint of Amanda that we were just witnessing is actually taking place inside the confines of an old television set. And in fact, this television set is not the only one. We see an entire wall of television screens, all placed one on top of the other as different people live out their mundane lives as we watch through their eyes. The sole proprietor of this exercise is revealed in the form of Will, a mysterious man who lives out his days watching the people on the screens, jotting down notes and comments about many of the perceptions he places throughout their lived experiences. At first, we as audiences are disoriented by the viewpoint that 9 Days takes. This is because, at first, there is nothing inherently unusual about the setting that Will finds himself in, which is a modern house in which he seems to be the sole occupant. However, we soon find out that this is not entirely the case. Will's house sits in the middle of an expansive salt flat, stretching on for miles in every direction with no semblance of life to be found. And as Edson Oda slowly reveals, the profound nature of this environment in the film quickly becomes apparent. You see, Will is an arbiter of sorts, whose main focus and job is in watching over souls he has been assigned in his afterlife position. As he maintains focus on all of these assigned beings and documents their entire lives almost as a guardian angel type figure, he is also charged with filling vacancies on Earth when one of these humans unfortunately passes on, which is signified quite symbolically by the faded color tones of a broadcast signal that has been lost in the television set. In this circumstance, a process begins where, over the course of 9 days, Will has the opportunity to interview candidate souls who have never lived for a chance to fill the vacancy on Earth and be born. If they are not selected for the position, however, their existence is erased entirely, as if they were never present in the moment. In any other form of media or film out there, such a process might seem entirely discordant or superficial. However, 9 Days operates on a level where the entire course of action over this time frame is treated as natural or wholly original, a facet of life that must be completed, and the result is all the better for it. In one of the first sequences of 9 Days, we as audiences get the opportunity to view such a process as it unfolds. However, the result is nothing short of heartbreaking. Harkening back to Amanda, the violin prodigy with a future in front of her, Will feels such a profound fondness and love for her, watching with every unfleeting moment as her practice paves the way for experience. In fact, Will has made plans to watch one of her upcoming concerts, where Amanda will be prominently featured in one of the core solos in the show. However, quite untimely, this day never arrives. Will watches, powerless, when, the morning of the concert, Amanda gets behind the wheel of the car, steers at high speed into a barricade, and her television set goes blank, soon becoming replaced with a signal loss that indicates a vacancy on Earth. Will, at first, cannot believe these circumstances. After all, he watched Amanda every day. He was present with her in his role as her overseer, watching as she moved throughout life with calmness and determination. He argues that there were never any signs that indicated Amanda was unhappy or hated her life. However, this disbelief soon turns into guilt, which is the driving thematic force behind Will as a character in the film. Will begins to believe that maybe, Just maybe the signs had been there all along. Maybe he hadn't watched intently enough. Maybe the comments he scribbled down copiously hadn't been detailed enough. No matter what the element, Will as a character feels deep and unimaginable loss and grief through the suicide of Amanda. And it is his core grief and longing that paves the way for profound healing and warmth in the film itself. As is the custom in his core job, Will soon begins the preparations to interview soul candidates to fill Amanda's vacancy on Earth. And one by one, they all start arriving. There is Alexander, the humorous and often nervous candidate who never seems to take anything seriously. There is Kane, a mysterious and often serious candidate who feels cold and detached. There's Maria, an inquisitive and curious soul who wants to understand and break down all of life's mysteries. And then there is Emma, a candidate who, at first glance, is a little bit different from the others. It's something Will notices at first as well, unable to comprehend the core behavioral discrepancies and the ability for Amanda to feel so deeply for something she has never experienced herself before, which is life. Yet it's through this core dynamic between Will and Emma that something quite beautiful flourishes throughout their characterization. You see, one of the main questions raised to audiences throughout the bulk of 9 Days is, how did Will actually step into this role? What allowed Will to gain this job of overseeing the souls on Earth? And most importantly, in this position, how does he actually understand life and its experience on a fundamental level? And the answer, shockingly enough, is because Will once experienced life on Earth himself. In fact, his life, as we are told, was fruitful and beautiful, full of so much nuance and depth in every fashion. However, the unfortunate truth of this was at the time, Will was not able to see his own worth within. Although it's never explicitly stated in the film, it's heavily implied that Will took his own life early. It seems to be a decision that has weighed on the character ever since, and in this role in which he must delegate and watch over the people on Earth living their lives out, it's something that causes cold detachment within him. Perhaps that's why he clashes so harshly with Emma, who arrives with an innate sense of empathy and curiosity at what life itself is. However, Will sees this inherent empathy and emotion as a weakness. The world, as he wagers at one point in the film, is built to destroy and maim anyone who harbors the least amount of kindness and compassion within them. He has decided that in order to prepare souls to fill vacancies on Earth, he must prepare them to face the cold and hard truths of such an environment head on, which involves tuning out kindness, which is something he terms as something superfluous or unnecessary. However, Emma, throughout those 9 days, challenges that very notion in ways he cannot possibly imagine in the moment. As we learn in the film, Will is not the only overseer on this plane, but is instead one of many different individuals tasked with this role in the afterlife. As Will walks back to his home at one moment in the film, he sees other distant homes, presided over by similar individuals watching the same television sets with intensity and focus. However, although their roles might be similar, there is a core difference in the approach Will uses in his practices over the 9 days process, and this more than accounts for and explains his lived experience on Earth. Unfortunately, over the course of those 9 days, almost all of the souls fail the interview process at one point or another. These souls are then tasked with the empty void of nothing with which they will return after too long. However, Will has decided in this process to do something uniquely individual and different from other people in his profession. At the end of each interview, when each candidate is no longer in consideration for the role, Will takes a piece of paper, gives them a pencil, and asks them to write down a memory that they loved watching or learning about throughout the process of these 9 days as they watch life on Earth. In this way, he will do his best to recreate that moment or experience for them in the final moments before they disappear. And this paves the way for some of the most profound and quietly moving moments in the film itself. As we watch in the shadows of a darkened basement, Will fills a pool of water and pours sand on the brink of it, stretching a backdrop of a blue sky across as a candidate sits, feeling the sand underneath his toes as ocean sounds echo throughout earphones. We also watch as Will consoles the soul in the final moments before it returns to the void, clutching onto the last experience he has ever felt. We watch as Will sets up a bicycle in between 3 linen sheets, placing projectors behind each of them and creating a 360-degree experience as a candidate cycles throughout Paris and Europe, with a fan blowing a light breeze through their hair. One of the most profound moments about 9 days as a film is how Oda has so vividly and carefully contextualized the moments in life that we take for granted through such a vivid perspective. These moments, these elements, these ideas that are a core experience of our lives are made so earnest and affecting through the lens of someone cherishing every second in the last moments of their existence. It's something that truly allows you to take a step back to examine the small moments we take for granted in our own lives, the small hellos or smiles we give to those we meet, the moments we cherish with the people we love, the core experiences and ideas that make up the fabric of our being. And this is precisely why the film matters so much. Early on in the film, one of the core exercises that Will makes the participants engage with is taking a small notebook, watching the television screens throughout the day, and choosing a single moment to write down that they like. As we watch these candidates and their viewpoints, we see these television screens, we see the turmoil and pain in life, yet also the happiness and abundance of joy that these moments moments invite as well. And this is precisely the moment in the film that fundamentally changed my outlook on life. You know, years after watching this film, as I sit here recording this video, I can't even begin to describe how grateful I am to be sitting here still. There's so much in my life that I'm grateful for, whether it's the health of friends and family, the fact that I get to talk about movies on here for a living and a career, and I made so many important connections through this field and film industry, or most importantly, the fact that I still get to wake up day after day with the promise of something great tomorrow. One of the core reasons I love film is because of the core conversation and connection it can broach. And 9 Days is fundamentally the movie that did just this at a time in my life where I really needed it. And that is why the film is so special to me.